So we're going to talk about foreclosure and bankruptcy, and we're going to talk about it from a few different viewpoints. One, of course, is for the person who is facing it, but also for anybody who is a real estate investor, a real estate agent. What are the things that we can do and say? And I know you are in the state of Florida, so you have a very different viewpoint than some of the other states.
Welcome to the Jennifer J. Hammond Podcast. Jennifer is a licensed realtor, educator, speaker, and best-selling author. Jennifer's goal is to help you find your yay in every day.
So I want to go ahead and switch gears and let's talk about bankruptcy, because also, as I asked you before about foreclosure, I think if you have a crystal ball, we hear a lot of predictions that next year will be the year that a lot of businesses will also not be able to continue to succeed. So both, businesses as well as personal bankruptcies. What do you think is going to happen next year?
Again, we anticipated this wave of foreclosures and bankruptcies that really hasn't happened. And within the bankruptcy community, we're still, is this wave coming? Is it going to happen? And again, there's a whole bunch of economic factors at play here too. I've done a lot of talking about student loan issues. Those are driving some bankruptcies. I've talked a lot about medical issues. Those are driving some bankruptcies. And again, the same kind, people getting divorced and people getting sick and people losing their jobs, and all that stuff impacts bankruptcies. We can use bankruptcy in a foreclosure context, either number one, to add another delay to the process. We can use bankruptcy to try to mediate, to modify the loan, just like we can in state court. So again, that's a third attempt to modify the loan so we do it pre-foreclosure, we do it within the state court foreclosure, and then we can possibly do it within bankruptcy court. So there's three attempts there to modify the loan. We can use bankruptcy to catch up what we're behind in payments. So that's another angle that bankruptcy can help out. I don't necessarily like bankruptcies for failing businesses. And part of the reason there is, number one, Florida has a statute. It's called the Assignment for the Benefit of Creditors, or an ABC. And it's basically a bankruptcy, but it's state court run instead of federal court run. And it's a little bit of a cleaner process for a business that's shutting down. In a bankruptcy context, one thing that's different for business bankruptcies than individual bankruptcies, businesses are not eligible for a discharge. So that thing that says these debts are eliminated doesn't apply to a corporation or an LLC. So I don't like that. Certainly I've done them. There's situations where they apply, but as a general rule, I don't like them. And a lot of times, like I know for my law firm's is a single member LLC. A lot of times when I have to incur debt, when the law firm has to incur debt, I have to personally guarantee that debt. The lease agreement for our space. I think I just got a new copier. I had to guarantee that thing. So if the business fails, if the law firm were to fail, I'd still personally be on the hook from the guarantees. So again, there's a bunch of reasons I don't like business bankruptcies. If you're going to go the route of a business bankruptcy, now you're talking Chapter 11, and we're starting to deviate from the foreclosure discussion. But that one you can use to salvage or save a failing business if you think the business will have the revenue to do so. Other than that, we're talking about Chapter 13s, which are repayment plans. We're talking about Chapter 7s, which are liquidations, which are what people traditionally think of as bankruptcies. I do see those starting to uptick a little bit. But again, it's all driven by the same factors. I lost my job, or the IRS is coming after me for a big bill, or, I want to save my home. I want to get rid of my home. I was talking to a lady the other day that had, I think, like $60,000 or $70,000 in debt, and she's disabled. There's no way she's going to be able to pay that back. So let's and a lot of it's medical bill related. I know Congress is kicking around stuff on the student loan front to potentially make student loans dischargeable in a bankruptcy context. So if that happens, there'll be I think a wave of student loan borrowers trying to discharge their bankruptcies. So long-winded answer to a short question.
No, that's great. I think it's really important that we, again, explore it. And your experience in bankruptcy, I think, is really important to look at. So with real estate, and also I wanted to open up the floor. I know there's a bunch of people who had questions. So I'm going to start, let's start pulling some of you guys up. David, if you want to come up, anyone else, feel free to raise your hand and ask questions. Anyone is free to ask any questions you want. We're here until 9, so we're going to be here for another hour. Anyone who has any questions whatsoever. And then David, so David Randolph, I know he works as a real estate investor. So David, did you have a question for Shawn?
Yes, I did. Good morning, Jennifer. And Shawn, nice to meet you. I'm in St. Louis, Missouri. I'm a real estate investor. I rehab houses and I negotiate short sales in the state of Missouri as the buyer. So in other words, I step in to help the family from foreclosure, just like you do. So I applaud your efforts to use your skills and your training to help families out. I've been doing that for 11 years, but I'm doing it as an investor side. And so I make about $50,000 to $150,000 profit on each house because I rehab it, fix it up and stuff like that. But the key is, negotiating with the bank, stopping that foreclosure, trying to get the homeowner through, whatever options they may have. So that's kind of my quick background just for the clubhouse method here of doing things. And once again, people can always touch your profile and look and follow Jennifer. Make sure everybody on here is following Jennifer. And you can follow Shawn, but click on their picture and you can see their profile and click follow. But my question for Shawn is, like I said, I really applaud you're high powered. You got an attorney degree. And so one of the issues I run into in the state of Florida, in every other state in the United States, except for California and Florida, anybody can be a short sale processor for a real estate agent. You don't have to have an attorney degree or be a realtor. In every other state, we can step in and help families out and help stop that foreclosure and help them to do whatever options they may have, which you've already discussed many of those. My question for you is, in the state of Florida, I don't think you can even advertise to homeowners that are in trouble. Is that true? What's the Florida state law for people working with a homeowner in a foreclosure or pre-foreclosure status? David out.
Yeah, thank you, David. That it's a great question and one that I've talked about before in other places. There is a Florida law. I don't remember the statute number off the top of my head. I can probably look it up here in a minute, but there is a Florida law. It's under the consumer protection aspect of Florida law, and it specifically addresses what it calls foreclosure rescue services. And it basically applies to anybody who may be in foreclosure or could be in foreclosure, or they see the edge of the cliff coming or whatever. And it requires the investor to provide certain disclosures. And I think even to the extent of whether things have to be capital letters or things have to be in a certain size font and that kind of stuff. But yeah, there is a Florida law that applies. And it's interesting because I actually tried to use the law about a year and a half ago, on behalf of a client who I thought was taken advantage of by a real estate investor. Mm. And interestingly, the judge didn't really care about the law that existed. It was a situation where the lady agreed to sell her house for half of its fair market value to the investor. And none of the disclosures were provided. There was no compliance with the statute at all. And the judge's ruling was basically that the lady signed the contract. Not her fault, not the investor's fault that this lady made a bad deal with the investor. Even though I had everything in the statute that applied. The judge didn't really seem to care. Now, again, that's one judge in one county 2 years ago, year and a half ago, whatever it was, pre-COVID. So I don't know if we had a different judge. I don't know if we had a different county. I don't know if we had different facts. But yeah, there is a law in Florida that applies specifically to real estate investors that are trying to buy homes from people in foreclosure.
And I think that that's probably a question you'll hear across the platform about in different states. I know the laws are different as far as what you can do and what you can't do as a real estate investor to help someone. And I think that again is going to be a lot of people, again, when the loan modifications end, which is coming up next month in December, right?
Yeah.
So there's going to be a lot of questions out there on what people have for options. And one of them, what about how much have you done before? I mean, obviously you have that one that you just used as an example, but what are some of the other things? Have you worked with real estate investors before as far as helping out a homeowner who's facing foreclosure?
Oh, yeah. I work with investors all the time. I love working with investors. And what I've always said is that if you're doing it right, I'll help you to do whatever you want to do. But
Right.
if you're taking advantage of people in foreclosure, I may be first in line to come after you. Now, obviously,
I appreciate that.
I'm not gonna, do anything that creates conflict of interest. But if we're going to do it, let's do it right. And just for those that love statutory sites, it's Florida statute 501.1377. Violations involving homeowners during the course of residential foreclosure proceedings.
Okay,
That's the
and
title
one more
of the
time,
statute.
just because.
Sure. 501.1377. Violations involving homeowners during the course of residential foreclosure proceedings.
Yeah. And I
So-
think it's important to know, like, whatever state you're in. There you go. Inviting more people up to speak, to ask questions. But I think it's really important, no matter where you are, that you always find out what's happening in that state and how to legally do whatever you want to do. And hopefully, when I teach real estate investing, one of the things I'm always doing is find a win-win. There's always a way to create a win-win. And if there is no deal, then there is no deal. But if you're not creating a win-win for everybody, then there's no reason to be, you should not be creating something that's a win-lose. And I mean, I feel that as a licensed real estate agent. I mean, I'm in the Washington, D.C. area, but I go back and forth to Florida a lot. So I think it's so important that no matter what, your principle has to be based on how can you create a win-win for everybody. Okay, so is it Shawnee? Did I say it right, Shawnee?
That's right, Shawnee.
Hi, Shawnee. Do you have a question for? Good. How can we help you? Do you have a question?
Yeah, I kind of just wanted to add a question and a comment. I wanted to ask if, for Shawn, if there's any, I know you talked about investors, and it's a big problem, and there's investors that can help people. True, but there's a lot of people more that actually prey on people, giving them half the value when people don't. No, I mean, obviously, like you said, they signed the contract, but I think, there should be some more consumer protections, and also with wholesaling. I'm a licensed agent. I've also done wholesaling, but there's a lot of abuse there too. To me, it's basically unlicensed activity. I feel that they should have a license because many times they're going to people who have no idea the value of their home. And basically, they could be innovative, they could be have a criminal background, anything, and basically, make a huge profit. I know in Philadelphia they started making you have to actually have a license now because of that. It happened where there was a case where somebody bought a house for somebody that inherited it for $20,000. They sold it the next day for $250,000. So you would say they signed the contract, but these people had no idea it's preying on people. And like I said, I think it's basically unlicensed activity. These people could have any type of background. They don't have any experience. So I just wonder if there's anything, in the state where you are, Florida, that addresses those two issues. I think I heard you talking about it before with investors. And not everybody's a bad person, but I've seen a lot of times where both investors and wholesalers are doing the wrong thing. Just unconscionable, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good comment. And I think and I agree with you. I think you treat people right. And I think where the line is, and part of the reason Florida tries to limit it a little bit is if I'm a real estate investor and I approach Jennifer to buy her house and she and I make a deal, that's one thing. But I think where the problem comes in is where I use my knowledge or experience to take advantage of the situation. I lie to Jennifer about the value of her house. I walk in and I say, gosh, this house is going to need $100,000 worth of work when maybe it really doesn't. Or, hey, there's 10 sinkholes in the area, which, Florida's basically built on Swiss cheese. So there's, 10 sinkholes in the area. So we need to discount the value. I think that's where the problem comes in. And I agree, if you're treating people right. Way at the beginning of my firm, I was representing a real estate investor and I get a call. He had bought someone's house and I get a call from another attorney. And the attorney said, I'm going to sue your client for taking advantage of mine. And I said, well, wait a minute. We bought the house on the eve of the foreclosure sale. We moved your client to another house that was brand new and fixed up, and her rent payments are less than what her mortgage payments were. We gave her a new air conditioning unit. We put a new roof on the house. We gave her like $5,000. Exactly how was your client taken advantage of? That was 17 years ago. I've never heard from that attorney since. So treat people right, be honest with them, make good deals. I think the other place we get into problems are the investor gurus, the ones that have never done a deal, but are teaching people how to do deals and teaching them the wrong way. I remember my eyes got open to the guru community when I saw a guy advertising a course on how to create and sell people courses. And I thought that's, come on, how much more crazy does it get than that? But I think it's people trying to take advantage, people who are uneducated, people who are not trying to find those win-wins. Those are what give the investor community a black eye. The ones that are doing it right, go for it. I'll help you out as best I can.
Yeah. And I think that that's really important when you're licensed, because I'm licensed in Washington, D.C., Virginia, and Maryland. Every state treats real estate investors a little bit differently. And I definitely know that even as a licensed real estate agent, so often people are asking, hey, would you create this addendum? Would you do this? And I'm like, now you're asking me to create legal language. So no, I will not, but I will contact a lawyer. We'll get legal language and then we'll add it to whatever we need to. But I think it's really important that you're paying attention, especially for people who are facing bankruptcy or foreclosure, because I think not only may they not understand the market, the value, lots of other parts, but they also a lot of times don't understand the contracts. And so they're not fully aware of what they're signing. Plus, I'm going to say something that, again, might be a little controversial, but they're also very emotional. And so they may not be looking at things with the most clear analytical mind, and making the best clear decisions because they're so, just like you had mentioned before about divorce or even death or something that's happened that's put them in the position they're in. And then when they go to make financial decisions, it's not always the best ones. How do you advise people to help them when they're facing that part of it, the emotional side?
I think that's one of the situations where being involved my being involved or an attorney being involved is the better solution for them. So I've told people many times, what I do is not rocket science. You can do it yourself. You don't need an attorney to represent you. But I think where we add value is in two places. Number one, this is what we do. So I also take the philosophy that, I know how to mow my lawn, but I'd rather have a lawn service do it so I can spend more time, as soon as we're done with this interview, I'm driving 2.5 hours to Cape Coral, Florida from Tampa, Florida for my son to play in a soccer game. Tomorrow we've got another soccer game locally here to Tampa, so I don't have to drive as far. But I wouldn't be able to do that kind of stuff if I had to mow the lawn on the weekend. Can I change my own oil? Absolutely, I can do so. But, I take it into the shop, let them handle it, and I can maybe bang out some emails while that's happening. Can I do my own tax return? Absolutely. I graduated with a degree in accounting, but my dad's a CPA, and so I let him do it. So I take the same sort of philosophy in terms of what I do. Can you do what I do? Absolutely. But you've never done it before. You haven't done it as often. So let me do it. And then the other piece to that is, like you said, the emotional aspect of it. So I'm invested in my clients, but I'm not invested in the situation.
Right.
So I want to do well because I want them to do well, but I'm upset for them that they had a spouse pass away, but I'm not as emotionally burdened by that as they are. I can think more clearly. I can think more logically where they may not be able to. And so that's where I think an attorney really benefits the situation here.
And I think it's really important because, again, when someone's emotional, whether it's a divorce, a death, or whatever may be happening in your life that is creating that emotional turmoil, I think sometimes you're not even seeing that there are different options. Like we were talking about earlier about, when someone is facing foreclosure, there are all these different options. So there's loan modification, but loan modification can be done in all sorts of different ways. There is the possibility of refinance, but that could be really tough depending on, and understanding those factors, but not even understanding the choices because there's that emotional block. And I know I went off on a tangent on that, but I really think that that's something so often we don't consider is the emotional side of it. And then all of a sudden making a decision that's not the best for you. And maybe you just didn't even know what the other options were. And I think that that's really an important part of this foreclosure, bankruptcy, or whatever kind of, I want to say, distressed real estate conversation.
Well, and I get it because I'm dealing with people when they're at almost their lowest point financially. And a lot of times you're right. Not only financially, but the financial issue was caused by a divorce or a death or a loss of job or whatever. I'm wearing for those that are on YouTube Live and watching, I'm wearing my the podcast, the logo. I have a podcast as well, and I'm wearing the logo shirt for that. But the symbol for the law firm is a phoenix. And part of the reason there is my law school logo was a phoenix. So, giving them a little credit for teaching me. But also it's sort of what I do for my clients, helping them rise from the ashes and rebuild. And that's part of the reason why I chose the phoenix as the law firm's logo.
Well, I like that. It's one of my favorite symbols too, because I feel like, so many of us, whether we realize it or not, a lot of times you have to be a couple of years past when you've had, I want to say, a Phoenix experience in your life, because so many of us are having to reinvent ourselves or do something that is a brand new rising from the ashes. And each of us goes through a time where our parents die, loved ones die, and divorce is, unfortunately, what is a statistic? Like 50% of divorces fail. So divorce is all over. And so those are just a few of the things. Never mind, now we have a pandemic that has created even more, I want to say, losses for people, whether it's job losses, businesses that they loved that they have now lost. So all of that emotional side of it, I think, makes the entire foreclosure and bankruptcy conversation a much, much tougher conversation than it's ever been before. So I want to go ahead and open it up for anyone else who has questions. And I wanted to, I see John Lee joined us. John, do you have a question that you want to ask us or ask Shawn?
I don't really have a question, just a quick statement. You were talking about non-licensed professionals. And I'm sorry, I apologize for getting here late, but the win-win-win situations are the only kind of deals to do. And my little comment is, after my mom died, we had my sister had a friend who was licensed realtor came in and got my dad to quickly sign papers, listing papers. He ended up losing, cut to the chase, he ended up losing over $100,000 because this licensed professional came in and did not have his best interest in mind. So it's not just non-licensed people that do that. It's very much licensed people too. And it's just something to be aware of. So I just had a comment. Thank you.
John, John, I appreciate you saying that, because I even though I'm licensed, I think that unfortunately every so often I cringe at the fact of telling people that I'm a licensed real estate agent, because there are so many, unfortunately, rotten apples that have kind of spoiled the barrel of people's opinion of licensed real estate agents. And it makes me sad when I listen to people's stories, and a lot of times I'll meet somebody and they're like, I would never use a real estate agent again because I had this really bad experience. And I think that in every industry, just like I'm sure you have jokes with lawyers as well, there are lawyers that, are not the best ones either. And I think that that's a really, really good point, is that licensed or unlicensed, you want to work with people who are creating a win-win scenario with any kind of deal, especially in the midst of foreclosure or bankruptcy. And I know you agree.
There's lawyer jokes.
There are a few. My dad's a lawyer. My grandfather is a lawyer. I could go on and on with lawyer jokes. I bet you have some really good ones.
I like John's comment as well. And I think it also comes down to due diligence. Yeah. Research. If you're whether the person you're going to work with is licensed or whether it's a real estate investor or whatever, do your due diligence. I mean, I don't mind if people look me up and they can check out my website. They can go to the Florida Bar website and check me out. They can listen to the podcast. They can read the blogs. They can read the books. They can, go ahead and do your due diligence and check out the person you want to work with.
Yeah, I think it's really, really important that we always do that we just constantly do our due diligence, and we realize that, and again, just take into consideration with yourself, if you're going through something as well, to be nice to yourself and to just keep on asking questions, even if sometimes you don't like to hear the answer.
Right.
It reminds me of like when we were kids and we would, put our hands over our eyes and be like, okay, so if I have my hands over my eyes, that means you can't see me, right? No. And it's the same thing as sometimes we just don't want to hear what the answers are. So let's do a real quick recap before we leave. And I want to make sure people know about your website and your podcast and all this stuff. So first of all, people, when they're facing, again, as you come around this corner of 2022, oh my gosh, 2022. And there are a lot of people who are going to be facing, okay, I can't pay my mortgage anymore. So foreclosure or bankruptcy, what do they need to know about foreclosure, that there are options within it?
Yeah. One of the earliest taglines of the law firm was that there are always options. Mm-hmm. So number one, call the lender, talk to your lender, see what options they can provide. If you don't like the options that they're providing, talk to a professional, whether it's a realtor, if you want to sell your house, or an attorney, if you want to maybe fight the bank. Explore your options about bankruptcy and foreclosure. Foreclosure isn't really something you choose. It's something you allow to happen, but check out all the options. Talk to a real estate investor. If you want to sell your house. Now, keep in mind, if for the person in foreclosure, I would think the realtor would be a slightly better alternative than an investor, only because the investor is trying to get you retail value for your house. The investor is probably going to pay you wholesale value for your house. But still, investors provide value, and the good ones out there will genuinely try to create a win-win and help you. So get educated, do your due diligence, check out all your options. What is bankruptcy going to do? What happens in a foreclosure? How many times can I try to mediate to get a modification? What does that look like? Get answers to all those questions.
And one thing before I forget, one thing we never got a chance to talk about was about condo associations or homeowner associations. And how does that work as far as the debt? And I know you're in the state of Florida, so let's just be specific to the state of Florida, because I know that that's also something that is a huge factor, whether they're a real estate investor or even as a licensed real estate agent, that a lot of times is the big oops or the big gotcha that people didn't know about, as far as if someone's not paying their mortgage, a lot of times they haven't been paying their homeowner association or their condo fees. And so how does that figure in for the foreclosure or the bankruptcy?
So two things. First, a lot of people in Florida have the misconception that the association, condo, homeowner, or whatever, can't foreclose if they've got a mortgage. And that's false. There's mortgage priority. So the mortgage is first in line, the association is second in line, but the association can foreclose and they can take someone's house away for failure to pay those monthly or annual or whatever assessments. Now, if the association does that, whoever buys at the association's foreclosure sale, and this is my second point, whoever buys at the association's foreclosure sale, that ownership of the property is now subject to the first mortgage. Now, if I buy at a foreclosure sale, I don't owe the mortgage because I didn't sign it. But if I don't pay the mortgage company can foreclose and unseat me as the property owner. Not only that, but while all that's going on, now as the property owner, I owe payments to the homeowner or condo association. So it's a situation where I've had a lot of real estate investors get burned because they pick up this property for a few $1,000s and they think, great, I got this. I bought $5,000 or $20,000 or $40,000, and I got this property worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. But the problem is you've got a first mortgage in there that sucks up all the equity and maybe even creates a negative equity situation. So on the homeowner side, the association can take your house away if you don't pay. On the investor side, do your due diligence and make sure you know what you're buying at the foreclosure sale.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I've heard that in Washington, D.C., I've seen that more than one time where somebody thought they were getting it for just a couple $1,000s and they didn't realize that they owed still whatever, if it was 2-3 mortgages that were attached to that property. So really understanding, is really, really important as a real estate investor, but also, I kind of threw this out here, the topic today, so that we could help people understand the foreclosures and bankruptcy. And again, I think it's going to be a topic that we talk about come January, February, a lot more than we are doing it even now. But as we anticipate, I wanted to make sure we had this conversation. So I know you have a podcast. I wanted to make sure people know about your podcast and your website so that people can contact you. I know you'll talk to people if they have questions in this field, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I always provide a free consultation. Yes.
Yay. Okay, good. So tell them about your podcast.
So the podcast is called Crushing Debt. And it is, again, exactly what it sounds like. It's me giving tips on how to eliminate debt. And I do have some shows that are geared towards investors. I have shows that are geared towards borrowers and homeowners. It's about a 50-50 split where sometimes it's me talking about a topic by myself and sometimes it's me interviewing somebody. And it's available everywhere: Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, all the artificial intelligence ladies, all of them.
I know there's all these different places, the podcast, and my podcast, the same thing. It's available on all these different platforms. And I'm like, let me see if I can rattle all of them off because there's so many of them now. There's Spotify, there's Apple, there's Google Play. There's just so many different ones. So anyway, I'm so grateful that you're here, but we go ahead and tell people your website too.
Yeah, it's my name, yesnerlaw.com. So it's YESNER law.com.
So ShawnYesnerLaw.com. You can also obviously click on his profile and picture there in Clubhouse. And I'm just so thankful again that you're here and that you're helping people and that you believe in helping people. I think that's so, so important. And I know John Lee's probably still there. Our tradition is at the end of this that we're always looking for the silver lining in anything that's happening. And there are some pretty interesting challenges that we've all faced, but I always look for the yay in today. So I'm going to ask you to lift your voices. And John, if you'll do this with Shawn and I as we do this, we're gonna say yay together. So 3, 2, 1, yay!
Hi, I'm Jack Canfield. You may know me as the co-author of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series And if you want more help in getting from where you are to where you want to be, I want to encourage you to listen to the Jennifer Hammond Show